So hi, I am Russell. I work at TouchLab doing Kotlin Multiplatform things. Also a Google developer expert in Kotlin, and I maintain this library called Multiplatform Settings, which we'll talk some about. So just to get a quick sense of the room, who here has tried Kotlin Multiplatform already? Nice, lots of people. Who's using it in production? Also a bunch of people. Yeah, Kevin, look at that. Look at everyone's raising their hand. Cool. So who's using multi-platform settings in production? Nice. Nice, nice, nice. Cool. So do a kind of quick intro to KMP and then talk some about the library. So Kotlin Multiplatform, for folks who don't know, is Kotlin's ability to run not just on the JVM, but also on JavaScript backend and on native via LLVM. And that lets you do things like run Kotlin on iOS, which is really nice if you want to kind of share some of your code in mobile apps. And the way it does this is by separating the concept of platform code and common code. So you have like platform code on the JVM is the Kotlin that you're used to writing in Android, for example, where you can use all your normal Kotlin APIs, and you can also talk to Android-specific APIs. Common code strips out all that platform-specific stuff, is only able to talk to kind of pure Kotlin stuff, and as a result, it's able to run on all platforms. So it gets you this kind of like Venn diagram of code sharing, where the left side here is the Android side, the Android Kotlin that you're used to writing if you're an Android developer. And kind of you can pull out a chunk of that is platform agnostic, and move that into your common code, which you can then integrate onto the iOS side. And the Kotlin Multiplatform toolchain kind of enables you to do this by it organizes these separate source sets for each of these categories, and does the work for you of kind of binding your common code to whichever platform that you're running on. And as you note, this isn't just for mobile. So there's more to Kotlin Multiplatform than just Kotlin Multiplatform Mobile. But life is too short for 8-way Venn diagrams. So here's the picture you get. So start the story with kind of a quick overview of where we all came from, or where this all came from. So in the beginning, in 2012 was the very first preview release of Kotlin. They had this, I wasn't aware of it yet, I came to this a couple years later, but they had this like web editor where you could compile Kotlin remotely and try it out. And they even already had an experimental version of the JavaScript backend at that point. And one of my favorite little bits of trivia is about a week later, they put out this roadmap of like what are the things that they're going to try to do with this brand new language. And the last thing on the list was a LLVM backend. So even all the way back then, like Kotlin was planned as a multi-platform language. It just took a little while to get there. So fast forward a couple years, in kind of towards the end of 2016, the Kotlin team started actually kind of committing code to enable multi-platform infrastructure. So this screenshot is, I did a little bit of kind of Slack archaeology. This screenshot is one of the first kind of mentions I had of someone asking about this header keyword. So the kind of first multi-platform stuff that was in the Kotlin repo had header and impl, which later became expect and actual. But some people started noticing it and asking about it. Yeah, like Jarvis was kind of starting to build behind the scenes, but not talking about it much yet. Early 2017, in April, they put out the first kind of tech preview of Kotlin Native. So at that point, Native was separate from KMP, but was they were starting to build it. It was something that you could start to try out. At one point, I tried to get one of the samples running on iOS, which was kind of fun, but I wasn't really doing anything with it yet. And just for like temporal context, a month later was when Google announced that Android was fully supported, or sorry, that Kotlin was fully supported on Android. So just funny, kind of putting all the timelines together. And towards the end of the year, the first Kotlin Conf was when they first started kind of talking very publicly about what are the plans around multi-platform. And, it was kind of pre-mobile at this point. Kotlin native wasn't integrated into the multi-platform world yet. But they had, like Andre talked about, like sharing things between server and client, and kind of their long-term goals there. By the next February, Kotlin Native finally had added multi-platform support, on Valentine's Day, actually. And that was the moment where I actually started to jump in and like write some test code. And the company I was working at the time, we had this this kind of demo project that we used as our starter when we started a new app. And one of the little demo things it did was some shared preferences interaction. And so as I was using that as my basis to kind of try out KMP, and I needed to think about like, well, how do you use shared preferences in Kotlin or on iOS? And that was kind of the original seed of what would become multi-platform settings. Around the same time, this guy in the third row here, Kevin Galligan, was putting out these blog posts kind of thinking about all of this stuff, talking about like what does the world look like when KMP becomes more common, and noting that like the community is going to need libraries, which I also thought about and thought was interesting. And by the next Kotlin native release, they actually added the ability to publish Kotlin native binaries kind of in a Maven compatible way. And so you could actually consume a library from Gradle and make all this stuff work together. So around that time, Kevin also was doing a lot of experimenting with SQL and SQLite. So I think he was the first kind of like third-party person outside of JetBrains to announce something running in KMP. But the end of that month, end of May 2018, was when I put out the first version of Multiplatform Settings. So what is it? It's essentially a API to interact with key value data from your common code, essentially the common equivalent of shared preferences. And under the hood, it delegates to the individual platforms for the actual implementation, and that has nice advantages for interop. So you might have kind of some shared code and some platform-specific code, and you can talk to the same shared preferences store or user default store on iOS, have the same source of truth there, whichever API that you're using. And then I've also added various little bits of kind of Kotlin goodies and syntax helpers. So there's operator functions, so you can get that bracket syntax, and integrations with various other things. The first version of the API looked a bit like this. So I had a expect class. I had like getters and setters. This is just kind of a abbreviated version of one function that was in it. But I kind of one of the things that you often do as a new multi-platform developer is you have this new tool called expect actual, where you can expect you can have an expect declaration in your common code that you create an actual declaration in your platforms that replaces it at compile time, so that you can get your platform-specific implementations. And you have this cool new hammer, and everything feels like a nail, and so you expect actual everything that you do. And it ends up being a little bit less flexible in practice. So the way it looks now, and I'll show you on the next slide, is instead of having an expect class, there's an interface with different implementations, and that gives you some nice advantages. Yeah, here's what the API looks like as of yesterday. So there's a settings interface. It has not only kind of the getter with a default value that was there in the original API, it also has a nullable equivalent. So if you don't want to pass the default value for when a value isn't present, you can have it return null instead of returning a default. The platform-specific implementations are implementations of an interface rather than being actual declarations of an expect class. There's also a bunch more platforms than there used to be. So I've added JavaScript support, Pure JVM support. There's a Windows implementation. There's a second iOS implementation that's backed by the keychain if you care about secure storage, as well as a mock version that you can use in your tests. That's just kind of backed by a in-memory map. And the first feature request I ever got, also from Kevin, was to add update listeners. So what if you want to be able to kind of respond to when something changes rather than just need to check it by hand? And this turns out to not be possible on every single platform that the library supports. So I added this extra interface, observable settings, that some things implement and some don't. So actually, if you look back here, like some of these are observable and some aren't. So you can kind of use that to determine whether you can add listeners or not in a more tight, safe way. A sort of funky thing I did with this API early on was the listener is untyped, and there's extension functions to kind of get typed callbacks, which is a little bit awkward, and we'll come back to that a little bit later. Another thing that I added later on is initialization is always kind of a complicated topic in KMP. So it's nice if you can kind of initialize things in your common code and you don't have to think about kind of injecting stuff from the different platforms. But typically you get less configurability that way because like you might want to, for example, on Android, like you might want to pass a specific shared preferences store. That's what you're going to use as your backing rather than just kind of the library picking some default. So in my initial APIs, I kind of erred on the side of kind of making the user make all those choices, and got a couple bits of feedback of people asking for, like, can you make that easier? Like, can you do it all from common? So I ended up adding a separate module called noarg that adds this expect function settings so that you can initialize the settings with just kind of defaults if you don't care about specifying it. And it's a nice example of like where there is, like I tend to not like to use expect actual kind of as the first tool that I use these days, but this is a nice use case of like when you want to have something that you can just call from common, you can do this expect function, and it kind of makes for a nice top level API. And I very deliberately did this in a separate module rather than kind of in the same core module, because if you don't like those defaults, you can like you could just do this yourself too, and make different choices than what I did. So time continues to go on. Fast forward a little bit to kind of 2020-ish. So I'm not telling the story perfectly in order anyway. But over time, the library system started to stabilize a little bit. Kotlin starts to experiment with backwards compatibility. So in the early days, every time a new Kotlin version came out, you had to update all your Kotlin native libraries, or else you couldn't use them anymore. And that started to get easier. I joined TouchLab in 2020 and started focusing on this stuff in my professional life and not just kind of inside projects. And the platforms themselves evolved some too over time. So in September of 2020, Google put out this data store library and said, oh, you're not going to want to use shared preferences in the future. You should use this other thing instead. And here I am with this library that's shared preferences based on Android. What am I going to do about that? So I ended up adding another kind of coroutines interop module. Oh, sorry. One of the complicated things about data store is it is all coroutines based. So all the APIs are suspending or flow based, which the settings API is not. So I ended up adding this module with a couple new interfaces that could handle that. So there's a suspend settings that just kind of has suspend versions of all the same functions, and a flow settings that extends suspend settings and has flow APIs. And then there's kind of converters to go back and forth between them, so you can wrap a non-suspend thing in a suspend and like a observable settings and a flow settings. And you can go back if you're willing to accept that it uses run blocking internally. So it's a little bit clunky. I'm not like completely happy with where this is right now, but it's there if you want to try it out. The other integration that I play with during this time is Kotlin serialization. So one of the kind of lesser well-known version or elements of the serialization library is that you can define custom formats. So you can actually, with these APIs, you can essentially use your settings, your key value store as a serialization format. So like maybe you have a user object that represents the currently logged in user, and you could kind of manually save their key and their ID and whatever other metadata to your settings store kind of one at a time, or you could use Kotlin serialization to kind of do it all at once, and the library handles it for you. So I think it's kind of neat, and it was kind of a nice way to explore the serialization API some. I don't really know how useful that is, so if anyone's tried it out, I would love to hear some feedback. And that kind of brings us up to the present. So where are we now? I mean, I titled this talk Multiplatform Settings 1.0, right? So what I actually did was yesterday I released 1.0 alpha. And there's a couple reasons I wanted to do that. The main reason is I want to take this this moment of going 1.0 to kind of make the last few breaking changes and get some feedback about that before it's kind of all locked in. I also was thinking about kind of trying to time this with the KMM beta, the Kotlin Multiplatform Mobile, was kind of aiming to go beta right around now. They've since kind of delayed it to the fall. So my current thinking is to kind of try to aim for the final 1.0 release around then, to kind of mark how the ecosystem is stabilizing and be a part of that. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the things that are breaking, just so that you can prepare for it. The main one is doing a couple renames. So one of the kind of awkwardly inconsistent things about the API right now is most of the early implementations, like Android settings and Apple settings, are named for the platforms that they run on. Like later on, like some platforms have multiple implementations, and it's a little bit kind of inconsistent how things are named right now. So what I've opted to do is kind of rename everything to be based on the backing API. So Android settings will become shared preferences settings, Apple settings will become NS user default settings, and other things will kind of change similarly. So in the alpha, I have a bunch of deprecated type aliases to try to help with the migration. Those will go away in the final 1.0, but hopefully that means that people can kind of move through this more smoothly. The other kind of subtle thing that I'm changing is one thing I didn't point out about the getInt call originally is if you look at that default value argument, it passes a default parameter of 0. And the more I've kind of worked with different key value APIs and thought about things, the more awkward that feels, where you might choose not to pass that. And in a lot of cases, on platform APIs, you would get null when you don't pass a default value, or when the API doesn't ask for a default value. So I've opted to kind of get rid of that default parameter value so that you're always explicit about whether you want a default or not. And if you don't, then you use the or null version. And that one again, there's kind of deprecated functions that you can use, or deprecate annotated functions that you can use to help with the migration. And then the last big breakage is moving adjusting the observable settings API. So I mentioned the kind of sort of awkward untyped listener API and the extension functions, and I'm just gonna there's a default value in there that goes away. But the big thing is kind of moving the type functions into the main interface and getting rid of the untyped one, which feels a lot more natural. It's probably the thing people want to use anyway, and it makes it a lot easier to move back and forth between flow settings. which was something that I was struggling with in the initial design. So I'm very, very interested in feedback on all of this stuff. So please let me know if any of these choices are terrible. Let me know if there are other things that are worth breaking. Let me know if there are things that are really awesome too. I'd like to hear that. But that's kind of where things are today. So what about the future? What's next? So there's still plenty of open issues, kind of things to think about for the future, and I need to do a pass through these to update for the alpha that I just put out still. But one of the big things that's been on my to-do list for a couple of years now is get some sort of desktop Linux implementation. So I've prototyped a couple of things, mostly based on DBM-style APIs. And there's a couple of PRs that are kind of like draft PRs that are demoing that right now. I would love kind of feedback from Linux developers about what's useful there, because it's not an environment that I'm in very often. So that's a great call to action for an Android conference, is ask for desktop Linux people, but in case everyone's out there. And then I want to kind of stabilize the things that are still marked experimental. So that includes a couple of the implementations still. So the Windows implementation, I still have marked experimental because I want to add listener support to it, and I want to reserve the right to possibly break some things when that happens, but I don't think it's likely to happen, but it's still marked experimental just in case. And then the keychain is still marked experimental just because I've never really sat down with an iOS keychain kind of security expert and made sure that I'm not doing anything crazy. So I'd love to have a conversation like that or two. So next crazy call to action for an Android conference is, are there any iOS keychain experts? And then the coroutines and serialization interop are still experimental because I want to kind of possibly smooth out those interfaces some and just get more feedback on if they're working for people. So if you tried any of that out, please let me know. And yeah, I'm looking for feedback in general about all this stuff. So are there other things that you're missing if you're using the library? Are there other implementations that we could use on any of the current platforms? Other platforms that you would like to be supported? Yeah, I've played a little bit with some stuff, but there's nothing that's kind of obvious to my mind. So I'm definitely interested in community feedback, community contributions if you're interested. So let me know. So I've moved a little bit faster than I thought it would, which is awesome. So what are some of the lessons that I've learned kind of from all of this journey? One of the big ones is think about kind of all of your users when you're designing an API. And in my case, that's a little bit like thinking about all of your platforms. So like the initial design of the Multiplatform Settings API was very Android oriented. It was very kind of cut and paste out of what shared preferences was doing. And it's migrated over time to accommodate other things. But it's worth kind of, when you're starting out something new, like think about not just your first use cases, but like where you think things will go next and how to support that. Like even Android messed me up with this because then Data Store came along and it looks completely different. So what are you going to do? Another lesson is like keep an eye on new tech that you're interested in. So I got into KMP very early because in the year or so leading up to it, I was kind of watching what was happening from the sidelines, and so I was aware of it to be able to kind of jump in on day one and try things out. Like one of the things I often say about multiple settings is someone was going to build this library. Like a shared key value store is a fairly, like it's not a super complicated thing. It's a fairly obvious thing to try to do. And a couple other kind of people have done it. Like there's a couple of other APIs out there that do similar. But none of them have really caught on the same. And one of the adventures I had was I was there first because I was kind of watching things. And a similar thing then happened with Data Store, where I was kind of watching the community chatter and heard about kind of some of the early AOSP commits about that, and was kind of watching as that led up to its first release and was able to think about how to support it early on. Another lesson is open source is really, really empowering. So this library was how I broke into doing conference talks, because I was putting it together, and I submitted a talk to DroidCon New York, saying, here's how you build multi-platform libraries, and here's mine. When like 3 people were doing it so far. So conference organizers really like it when you like announce a new thing. So that was part of my motivation for kind of that being the focus of this talk as well. So it can be a really neat way to kind of break into the community and get yourself out there. And you should remember, like, it does take some extracurricular time. So like in Chetna Rahman's keynote yesterday, they talked about, like, sometimes you need a little bit of crunch. And there's a similar message here of, like, if you want to take advantage of this stuff, like, sometimes you need to put in a little bit of extra time to kind of invest in yourself and in your career outside of just your day-to-day work. And final lesson, like, Kotlin Multiplatform is really pretty awesome. So I've been using it, like, into it for a while and using it for a while, so maybe I'm a bit biased, but I definitely encourage you to check it out if you haven't. Come back and check it out again if you have and you weren't quite convinced yet. It's certainly not perfect yet, but it's really come a long way from where it was a couple of years ago. And there was another thing I was going to say that I didn't write down. But yeah, like, JetBrains has been putting a lot of investment in improving it. It's not, like, Kotlin Multiplatform Mobile is not in beta yet, but it will be soon. And, like, the ecosystem is really coalescing, and it's a nice time to jump into it. So, oh yeah, that was the point that I was making on that last slide. Yeah, the KMM beta is not going to happen right away, but it's happening soon. So, thank you very much. Yeah, you can talk about that.